He mocked Elon Musk, dismissed the law, and ran his courtroom like a personal empire, until justice finally caught up with him in the most humiliating way imaginable. The Cincinnati courtroom was packed, so full that people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The dark wood-paneled walls, heavy with history, seemed to absorb the tension in the air. At the center of it all sat Judge Samuel Whitaker, a man whose name carried weight, though not the kind most judges would be proud of. He was notorious for his theatrics, cutting people off mid-sentence and treating the courtroom like his own stage. Some called him passionate, others reckless. But today, he was particularly impatient, flipping through documents with audible sighs, barely acknowledging the witness stand. Then there was Elon Musk. He sat straight-backed, composed, his navy suit crisp and immaculate. He wasn't easily rattled. He had faced tougher critics, sharper words. Yet even he could sense the hostility radiating from the bench. It had been clear from the moment he was called to testify. Judge Whitaker barely glanced up. "Let's make this quick, Mr. Musk. I assume you have something relevant to say?" Musk didn't flinch. He adjusted the microphone, cleared his throat, and began laying out the facts in a steady, controlled tone. But Whitaker wasn't listening. He leaned back, arms crossed, a smirk playing on his lips, as if waiting for the perfect moment to interrupt. The moment Musk made his first key point, the judge pounced. All right, we get it," Whitaker scoffed, waving a dismissive hand. "You're here to make a speech. I don't need a press conference in my courtroom." A murmur rippled through the audience. The court reporter hesitated before resuming her typing. Even some attorneys shifted uncomfortably. Musk remained composed. He locked eyes with the judge, the hint of a frown forming, but he refused to take the bait. Instead, he continued speaking. But Whitaker wasn't done. He exhaled loudly, flipping a page of his notes with exaggerated effort. "Let's move this along before we all die of boredom, shall we?" A few chuckles echoed in the gallery, some from Whitaker's usual supporters, others from those who laughed out of discomfort. At the defense table, Musk's lawyer, Daniel Carter, leaned toward his colleague. "This is a joke. This isn't just bias. It's outright contempt." The younger attorney beside him, Rachel Levine, nodded, her voice low. "He's doing it on purpose. He wants a reaction." But Musk wasn't giving him one. He simply adjusted his tie, kept his voice even. "With all due respect, Your Honor, this testimony is important for the integrity of—" "Spare me the lecture, Mr. Musk," Whitaker cut him off, shaking his head. He let out a dramatic sigh, then leaned forward. His next words were quieter, but razor-sharp. "Let's be real. You're not here for justice. You're here to grandstand. It's what you people do best." The murmurs stopped. The condescension in his voice was unmistakable. Musk's jaw tightened, but still he didn't react. He exhaled slowly, his hands clasped on the table. Across the room, though, his legal team was already moving. Something was about to shift. Judge Whitaker was enjoying himself. He tapped his fingers against the bench, watching Musk with a smirk that made it clear he had no respect for him, perhaps never had. But the courtroom wasn't on Whitaker's side today. The murmurs that followed his comment weren't approving. People shifted in their seats. A few exchanged uncomfortable glances, waiting to see what would happen next. Musk, for his part, refused to engage. He wasn't here to argue with a man who thrived on confrontation. He straightened his papers, cleared his throat, and continued. "As I was saying, Your Honor, the facts of this case—" Whitaker groaned. Actually groaned. "Oh, give it a rest, Mr. Musk." He turned to the plaintiff's attorney. "Do you really want me to sit through another 5 minutes of this?" I thought we were dealing with evidence, not ego." A few gasps rippled through the room. The plaintiff's attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Lisa Monroe, glanced at Musk before responding. "Your Honor, Mr. Musk's testimony is directly relevant to this case." Whitaker waved a dismissive hand. "If you say so." He narrowed his eyes at Musk. "But make it quick. My patience for nonsense is wearing thin." The hostility was no longer just verbal. Whitaker shifted in his seat, rolling his eyes at nearly every sentence. When Musk mentioned key case details, the judge muttered under his breath. At one point, he even scoffed loudly enough for the jury to hear. The tension in the room thickened. At the defense table, Carter, Musk's lead attorney, leaned toward Rachel Levine. "This is unreal. He's not even trying to hide it." She nodded. "Should we file a motion?" "Not yet," Carter exhaled. "But we're getting close." Across the courtroom, a reporter scribbled furiously in her notebook. She had covered enough trials to know when a judge was stepping out of line. And Whitaker was sprinting past the line, straight into misconduct territory. But Whitaker remained unfazed. He thrived in moments like these. He leaned forward, elbows resting on the bench. "Tell me, Mr. Musk, when exactly did you become an expert on constitutional law?" Musk met his gaze. "I studied law before I entered business, Your Honor." "Oh, right," Whitaker said, mock realization in his tone. "I forgot. Another billionaire who thinks reading a few books makes him an expert." Silence. Even the bailiff, a man who had worked in this courtroom for over a decade, didn't move. Whitaker wasn't just being rude. He was belittling one of the most influential entrepreneurs in the world. On record, in front of a jury. And he didn't care. Musk let a few seconds pass, then leaned slightly forward, his voice calm, measured. "Your Honor, I'd appreciate it if we could focus on the case." Whitaker laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh, that's rich," he scoffed, looking out at the jury as if they were in on the joke. "He wants me to focus. You hear that?" No one laughed with him. In fact, the room was eerily still. A shift had taken place. The arrogance that had carried Whitaker through so many cases, that had let him dominate the courtroom for years, wasn't working today. But he was too wrapped up in his own ego to notice. He turned back to Musk. "Here's my advice, Mr. Musk. Stick to tech. Leave the law to people who actually know what they're doing." The tension snapped. A few jurors stiffened. The court reporter hesitated before continuing to type. Musk's legal team didn't even bother whispering now. "This is blatant misconduct," one of them muttered. And then, suddenly, quietly, Daniel Carter reached for his phone. Because Judge Whitaker had just crossed the line, and someone was about to make sure he paid for it.